My name's Luke. Thank you for joining me at MMA Fancast. And my guest today will be making his amateur MMA debut at Brawl at the Berg 13 for 247 Fighting Championships, Morovo Convention Center, October 1st, which is a week from this interview. Welcome to the show. So excited to have you. Trapper Harris, welcome to the show.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
We're a week out from your debut. Let's jump into that. How are you feeling? You're in your first ever fight week. And so what's it like being so close, but yet still you have a whole week to get there before you're at your MMA debut? How are you feeling? What's been going on with you?
A lot of mixed emotions, a lot of excitement, and a lot of making sure everything's tweaked and ready. I've been working a lot on my kicks and striking, a lot of grappling too. But I think me and my team, we're very excited to be there.
Well, you mentioned your team. Obviously, you have a lot of emotions being a week out from your amateur MMA debut. I'm going to be super excited to be there cage side to see you in action. Who's your team? Where have you been training? What's it been like getting ready for your debut fight?
I train in a small gym called Patriot Fitness in Huntington, PA, and my wrestling coach is John Morton. He's been Junior Valley's high school's varsity coach for about 10 years, I believe. And we have a West Branch wrestling coach. His name's Kevin Butler, and he's been working with me more towards the grappling, submissions, and striking. Well,
it's nice to hear that you come from a small gym, Patriot Fitness. I know one of the things that Jim Mooney, the main matchmaker for 247, tries to do is to bring in a wide variety of gyms. We've got some big gyms in the Pittsburgh area that are kind of always represented, but to kind of build the number of gyms and the people that participate, it's always very exciting. What athletic experiences did you have before MMA, or what brought you into mixed martial arts or martial arts in the first place?
Yes. Basically, as soon as I could walk, I've been playing baseball and football. My dad has been either the assistant coach or head coach to all my teams. And if it wasn't training for the team, it was on the weekends. He would still have me doing practice. But football and baseball was most of my life growing up. And I wrestled halfway through my high school year, but then focused more on football because I saw a future in football and baseball. I've always been drawn to the UFC and watching boxing, and I was originally going to go for boxing, but I kind of like the grappling more.
Well, what was so your first experience was training boxing? Is that what you first enjoyed? You said the boxing aspect, and what led you to enjoy the grappling or the jiu-jitsu more than the boxing?
More involved, more. I think anybody can stand toe to toe and just throw punches, but I think it's more intertwined and more of a skill to be able to grapple and maneuver on the ground.
Okay. So what was your first, I guess, submission that you learned that you felt competent in, that you felt like, oh, wow, I've learned something that I can actually put on people while we're rolling and training?
Without even knowing it, I fell in love with the guillotine. Something very simple, but you can find yourself in very easily. So I definitely prefer the guillotine over most.
Well, I mean, that's obviously a fantastic submission. We've seen it used so much in the UFC. Titles have changed hands because of guillotines. Titles have been defended because of guillotines. It's always exciting to see you learning a skill, particularly one like guillotine, which is great for any wrestlers who are trying to take you down. I'm going to give them credit, although they may, I'm sure, not be the first people to do this. But in the UFC, the Diaz brothers were kind of the first people I remember using the guillotine to also switch position. How much experience or rolling have you had where you have the guillotine in, maybe you're working to finish, maybe you're using it as a position to kind of do a sweep so you end up in mount, and the Diaz brothers have finished a lot of guillotines from mount. It's much harder to defend from mount, but also even if the guillotine is you give up on the guillotine, you're now in mount. How much sweeping have you done from the guillotine? Because it really does give you a really body control position.
Usually we worked on guillotines more or less right out of the clinch. Like we'd go in the clinch, and then say if they would drop their head, we worked a lot on putting the guillotine in there. But if they were on mount and got in too close, then I'd be able to do a guillotine. But we haven't really worked on sweeping out of it.
Gotcha. Well, there's obviously a lot of moving parts. To learn the skill is fantastic. When you mentioned you learned the guillotine, you're talking about the standing guillotine where you walk your hips in to your opponent, and kind of the standing guillotine looks, in fact, I think in some ways is kind of a more violent, tough submission. A lot of times you get like a panic tap. You can see this at any level. If you actually do put on a standing guillotine, that's a fantastic submission skill to have. So how have you been training? Do you train primarily at Patriot Fitness? Do they have all aspects, or do you kind of do some cross training?
I'd say cross. I'd say most of my training with striking and wrestling is at Patriot Fitness, but sometimes Gorilla House in Altoona, I'll go there and I will spar up there with. Sometimes some of my partners won't be available, but I do have. I'd call them teammates, people that want to get in MMA and have been training MMA that would like to spar with up there. It's closer for them.
Well, I mean, Gorilla House MMA is not only big time at the 247 Fighting Championships fights since show one, but it's also near and dear to my heart. The reigning defending featherweight male pro champion of the world for 247 is making his defense. I mean, I know you know that. I've already had him on the show. I think he's my show leader. I think he's been on at least 10 times or more on the show. Ethan Wolverine Goss. I don't know, or how close are you in his weight? Have you rolled with him or sparred with him? I mean, I know there's a big difference between making your amateur debut and going with a guy who's making his pro defense. So maybe you don't get a lot of time with him, but what's it like training in and around Ethan and the former bantamweight champion amateur-wise of 247, Wolverine, I'm sorry, the mole rat, all these animals, the mole rat, so Allgaier. So Cam the mole rat, Allgaier. So what's it been like training with them?
Ethan reached out to me, I think over the weekend, and said if I want to train with him, he's there 6 to 8 throughout the week. I'm just trying to free up time with my partner and getting them kind of up to Gorilla House to come with me so they could learn as well. But in the near future, I assume I'll be training with Ethan.
Gotcha. So you use the Gorilla House kind of as like a neutral spot to get on the mats with some of your training partners, and you haven't really been training with Cam. You don't have any interaction with Cam or Sid or Big Man Dan or any of those guys. Okay. Well, I just went through some, not all, of course, but some of the Gorilla House squad. They're obviously all very talented in their own right. It also shows how the coaches, Cassidy and Ross at Gorilla House, are open and willing to help you, even though you're not necessarily connected to the team, which I think really shows how, in many ways, gyms oftentimes, you can kind of see what their quality of their coaching is like in their kindness to you. 247 will be doing the first ever inductee to the Hall of Fame. They just announced it yesterday. An absolute Pittsburgh legend, who's a coach at the Mat Factory, Isaac Greeley. You probably don't know that name. You can watch some stuff. I'm sure they'll be doing his induction, but he kind of has a big influence of gyms being very open to other fighters and being supportive. And Coach Ross and Coach Cassidy at Grill House also have that attitude, which is pretty fantastic. So what do you want? What do you want to see from yourself in your debut? Obviously, this has been something that you've been training and are excited about. How long have you been training, kind of as we build up to your debut?
I'd say training, well, starting striking. I trained boxing primarily for a year, and then I guess rolled right into MMA for a year. So I'd say 2.5 years of fighting, more or less. And I mean, I'd like to win, much like us all. I'd like to win, but I'd also like to be that rookie that comes up and is like, how's he a rookie but knows what he knows, and is just like opens everybody's eyes a little bit.
Well, that is always kind of the dream, or the goal, I should say, for debut. You're fighting another debuter, and I've said it once. I know I'll say it many times on the commentary. It's really interesting as fans or commentation to watch debuters, because as you say, there's a wide range of debuts. There's debuts that look like debuts, and that's not a bad thing. You know, you got a long way to go and prepare, and, you know, just getting in there at all, no matter how short or long it goes, is a win in and of itself. There have been debuters in the last, you know, time of 247 being around. I remember Cam Allgaier, who trains out of Grill House, making his debut against a guy who I believe was either 1-1 or 2-0 at the time. So to be 0-0 going up against a guy with a couple fights of experience, and he won the fight and looked like he was the more experienced fighter, despite the fact being a debut. He ended up going undefeated until his most recent fight, where he had a loss, but 6-0 and got the amateur belt. So I know what you're saying, that's the goal, to look composed, to look better, and to really put together a great start to your amateur career. And there's something to be said, no matter how it starts, that you can still build off of it. Who's been important to you getting you to this point? If you have supporters, people in your life who's been kind of supporting you, even if they're not the training aspect. I know it takes a lot of time outside of whatever you're doing for work to really make the commitment to train. So what's your gratitude list and your shout outs coming into your debut?
A lot of my friends, they're coming to the fight, and they do honestly want to see a beatdown. They've been after me ever since they've heard about it. They've been after me about it, and they can't wait for it, and they want me to keep pushing for it. But another big one, I guess, would be my girlfriend. Make sure I train every day, because there are a lot of days where it's just like I don't. That's because MMA is the toughest thing I've trained for yet, and there's a lot of days where it's just like I'm sore. I'm not into it today, but she'll make sure I get up and I go do it. So she keeps me on track, and I'd say more or less my friends and my girlfriend.
Well, you just pointed out not only the humility and the kindness that has to go into being thankful for those that support you, but also your girlfriend. And we hear this over and over again, whether it's parents, spouses, girlfriends, sometimes kids of fighters, who really have to kind of motivate and support, because the dream and the goal is there. Well, like you said, it is tough, and it needs to be tough, you know, and that's kind of what develops the next level, and the new talent is putting in the work to get where you are. I can't wait to see you in action. October 1st, it's a week away from today, at the Mobile Convention Center for 247 Fighting Championships Brawl in the Berg 13. They can get tickets from you, your friends, people that support you, and also if the drive is too far, how far are you from the event Saturday?
Just about 3 hours, I believe. I'm in Huntington.
Gotcha. Okay. So that gives people opportunity to either come in, or for me to kind of plug and point out the pay-per-view, which can be found at 247fighting.com, and they can give you credit. We always encourage fans who are buying tickets, whether it be physical tickets or digital virtual pay-per-view tickets, is to credit the fighter that they want to see and support, because that helps you. But it'll be super exciting to see you in action. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Trapper Harris, it's been incredible having you on the show. I'm Luke Payson with MMA Fancast. Thanks to our first-time guest, Trapper Harris. You take care. See you in a week for your debut.
See you in a week, and thank you.
You got it. You're welcome. Have a good one. Best skills to you.
Thank you.